The healers said they couldn't fix it, because the magic blast that hit me was super powerful. The doctors gave me the same news. They said I was on the mend, but it would take a while to get back to full strength. That's what happened when Thomas tried to block a supercharged punch from Jin-Woo with his left arm. It was packed with some serious magic. By the time the battle ended, Thomas was a mess. His bones were so broken, they might as well have been dust. The healers worked super fast, and his body's own healing powers kicked in, which helped a lot. But there was still a chance he'd never use his left arm again. Jin-Woo's attack had been insanely powerful. Now Thomas had one big question eating away at him, but the only way to get an answer was to face Jin-Woo like this. Jin-Woo looked at Thomas and wondered if he was just showing off his injuries. "Let me try to put this together," Thomas said, his voice steady despite the pain. It was a tough situation for both of them, and they knew it. "Thomas, you could have taken me down along with everyone else from my team," Jin-Woo said, his voice steady but laced with a hint of amusement. "You and your crew were the ones who grabbed Jinyo in another country, and then went after Hunter Sung when he tried to rescue him." Jin-Woo leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. "That's why the Hunter Command Center ruled that I acted in self-defense. They saw the whole thing go down. Thomas and his crew had kidnapped Jinyo while they were overseas, and then they attacked Hunter Sung when he tried to rescue him. Because of this, the Hunter Command Center realized Jin-Woo had no choice but to fight back and defend himself. Even if he had hurt everyone there, no one could have punished him. Because let's be honest, punishing him would have been impossible. But Jin-Woo chose to spare almost everyone except Dong-Soo Hwang. Thomas, on the other hand, would have taken a different path if he were Jin-Woo. With all that power and the excuse to use it, Thomas wouldn't have spared a soul. Thomas couldn't shake off the question. Why had Jin-Woo let them live? For 2 days he'd been stuck on it. "Why did you spare us?" he finally asked. He knew he'd lost, and was at Jin-Woo's mercy. Yet Jin-Woo chose to let everyone go, even those who fought his shadow soldiers. Jin-Woo's reply was straightforward. "You didn't do anything wrong." Thomas felt a mix of frustration and relief. They had come to rescue Dong-Soo. After all, even if Jin-Woo acted a bit cocky, he did the right thing by sparing them. Even though they had attacked Jin-Woo first, he decided to spare their lives because he felt they had been punished enough for what they did. Thomas nodded in response. "Okay, I get it," he said. Thinking about Dong-Soo's punishment for his wrongdoings, Thomas realized Jin-Woo was being serious. It was a simple and straightforward reason after all. Thomas had more things to think about, but he felt calm. He smiled and said, "Once my arm heals, I'd love to have a meal with you. If you give your number to my manager, I'll reach out soon." After making his request, Thomas turned around. Behind him, Laura waited and nodded her head. Without another word, Thomas strode out of the grand hall. The hunter stepped aside as he passed, clearing a path like magic. Laura watched him go before turning to Jin-Woo with a smile. "He wanted to thank you for saving him and the others," she explained. Jin-Woo didn't know what to say to that. Laura tried to explain. Even though Thomas doesn't show it, he gets embarrassed really easily. Jin-Woo raised an eyebrow. "Huh?" Laura smiled. "If you say so." She seemed convinced. And Jin-Woo decided to trust her judgment. The good news was, this little chat meant Jin-Woo didn't have to go chasing after Thomas to assign him a shadow soldier. Small victories. Now that she'd decoded her boss's mysterious message, Laura pulled out a small notebook. "Hey, would you mind sharing how I can reach you?" "Hey," said Jin-Woo, breaking the silence. "Our guild master wants to thank you with a small gift." He offered her a smile. Laura's grin turned a bit awkward. "Our guild master, he's super competitive. If there's anything you need, just let me know." Jin-Woo shook his head politely. "No thank you, I'm good." Laura's smile faded slightly, like she wasn't sure how to react. Jin-Woo hated owing favors. "So please, pick anything you want." Jin-Woo almost turned him down again, but that seemed impolite. The problem was, he didn't really need anything. Between his raid earnings, and Ajin Guild's huge profits from selling giant remains, they were doing way better than most big guilds. "Sure, let me help." The text can be rewritten in a way that's both fun and easy to understand for 7th graders. Of course it wasn't like they had the Scavenger Guild's money or anything, but honestly they had more than enough on their own. He thought he wouldn't need their help, but just as he was about to say no again, something suddenly clicked in his mind. Wait a second, this is the Scavenger Guild we're talking about. They're not just any group, They're made up of the best hunters around. That's some serious talent. This version keeps it simple and engaging while preserving all the key details. After clearing who knows how many dungeons, they must have picked up tons of awesome gear along the way. Maybe their stash had something truly awesome hidden inside. Jin-Woo asked hopefully, "Hey, maybe there's a sweet dagger in there." He thought back to the Demon Monarch's dagger, which hadn't worked on some enemies with super tough defenses. Maybe the Scavenger Guild had something that could help them out. If it wasn't up to par, then he just wouldn't use it. Dagger. Understood. Thank you, Hunter Sung. Laura said with a big smile as she finished jotting down her notes and walked out of the banquet hall. Adam had been on edge the whole time Thomas showed up unannounced, but now he let out a deep breath in relief. Hunter Sung, are you gonna meet with the other hunters on the list now? I should. Let me help you find them. Jin-Woo's agents were spread out all over the grand banquet hall, ready to track down the hunters in a flash. No, thanks. Jin-Woo said with a smirk. I've got this covered. He had already sent out his shadowy allies, and they'd quickly located the hunters inside. Now all Jin-Woo needed to do was go say hello to each one. Adam looked puzzled by Jin-Woo's refusal of help. Jin-Woo asked, throwing the question back at him instead of answering. So why is there one hunter missing? Where's the sixth one? Adam's eyes narrowed slightly. How did you figure that out? Jin-Woo shrugged, and Adam nodded like he got the hint. Another trick up his sleeve, Adam himself. Alright. Here's the deal, Adam said. We've been trying to reach that hunter for days, but no luck. The Brazilian government is quietly searching too, but they haven't found anything yet. Jin-Woo nodded, taking it all in. Jin-Woo had assigned one of his shadows to keep an eye on Thomas, who was number 2 on the list. Numbers 3 and 6, Christopher Reed and a Brazilian hunter weren't there, so that left 7 hunters in the room. Jin-Woo turned to Adam with a nod. Let's get started, he said. Roger, Adam replied with a smile. Jin-Woo walked around the grand banquet hall, introducing himself to each of the hunters on his list. He asked Adam to introduce him to everyone so he could learn more about who he'd be working with. Jin-Woo started with number 1, Chugong, and went straight down the list to number 10. The other hunters watched, confused, wondering if he was trying to network. But it soon became clear he wasn't interested in talking to them. Jin-Woo had other plans, as they saw who Jin-Woo was choosing to talk to. Some of the hunters hoped he'd come their way next. But instead he walked right past them. The hunters who had been excitedly waiting for him looked down, disappointed. Finally, Jin-Woo finished what he needed to do, and left the banquet hall with his group. Before he went, he assigned shadow soldiers to every hunter on his list. Hunter number 10 cheered loudly, but the others just sulking and drank quietly. The next day, the Hunter Command Center was stumped. Why had alcohol use spiked so much compared to past years? Tomorrow's the last day, right? Assistant Director Connor asked, handing Adam a cup of coffee. Adam straightened up quickly and thanked him politely. Thanks, sir. Michael clapped Adam on the shoulder and sat down beside him. I freaked out when I first heard Goliath and Hunter Sung were fighting, he admitted. But luckily everything worked out because of you. Great job. Adam brushed it off. No big deal, sir, but his face lit up with pride at the praise. His reaction made the assistant director smile. So what's it been like with Hunter Sung? Adam thought about the question. Sir, did you know? Hunter Sung still works out every day. It works out. Yes, I've seen it myself. He runs 10 kilometers, does 100 push-ups, and even more sit-ups and squats. Michael's eyes widened in amazement. Jin-Woo was the most powerful hunter in the world, but he still kept up with his daily workout routine. Isn't that something? Jin-Woo was super fit, way beyond what's normal for humans, so jogging for him wasn't really gonna make much difference. The assistant director couldn't figure out why Jin-Woo even bothered with something so simple. Adam stepped in to explain. I think he's doing it more for the mental challenge, he said. Mental challenge. Adam nodded, like he got it now, looking at how Jin-Woo handled cutting-edge tech with ease, never skipped a workout, and had this weird ability to bounce back from being totally exhausted. Adam thought Jin-Woo was just, well, pretty amazing. Michael couldn't agree more. Wow, Jin-Woo is really an amazing guy. Wouldn't it be awesome if he were an American hunter? Michael felt a pang of jealousy toward Korea. Wait, this coffee tastes off today. Usually Michael loves how rich and flavorful it is. But now it's just too bitter. He couldn't even finish half of it. People in Korea had a saying, If you want to find the president of the Hunters Association, just look for the office with the lights still on late at night. President Go was burning the midnight oil again, trying to wrap up his work. Lately there had been more problems popping up because of the growing number of powerful magic creatures and beings with strange new powers. Dealing with all of this was President Go's job, but it also gave him a lot of stress. President Go set his papers aside on his desk, and rubbed his tired eyes. Something felt off lately. His heart had been racing non-stop, thump thump, thump. It had been a while since he was first told he had heart issues, but things felt different now. Was this the end? His doctor had warned him that if he didn't step down, he'd only have 6 months left. But here he was, still going strong after a year, and then another. Even if this was the end, he couldn't complain. Life had been good so far. Gun-hee let out a laugh, even though he didn't really feel like laughing. Back in the day he would have fought tooth and nail to stick around, just a little longer, but now, he wasn't as worried about it. What had changed? What was different from before? President Go sat quietly for a moment before letting out a small chuckle at the obvious answer. It was all thanks to Hunter Jin-Woo Sung that Korea now had the power to stop an S-rank level disaster. The country's status had risen because of Jin-Woo's existence. Maybe, just maybe, his heart had held on this long so he could meet Jin-Woo. A bittersweet smile crossed his face. What kind of nonsense am I spouting? President Go muttered to himself in the empty office. Speaking of Hunter Sung, wasn't he supposed to return to Korea tomorrow? The president's eyes lit up at the thought of Jinshul filling him in on everything that had happened with Jin-Woo. Read-scene. His phone broke the silence. Who could be calling at this late hour? Had something terrible happened somewhere? President Go felt a little nervous when he picked up the phone. Are you busy tonight? It was his wife. He sighed, thinking she might have something on her mind. Not at all, he started to say, but before he could finish, the line went dead with a weird crackling sound. He waited for her to come back on, but there was nothing, just silence. What was going on? President Go glanced out the window as he set his phone down. What he saw left him totally stunned. Everything that should have been there, buildings, roads, people, had vanished. In just seconds, the view outside turned into an inky blackness. Something impossible had happened. How in the world? President Go leaped to his feet, and that's when he noticed someone sitting on his couch. The person acted like they'd been there all along. But who were they? They didn't look familiar at all, and were they even human? This definitely didn't feel human. The figure had a super creepy vibe, with skin as pale as a ghost, long white hair, pointy ears like an elf's, and shimmering silvery eyes that looked like glittering jewels. It was an ice elfa being known as an ice slayer. President Go hadn't even noticed when it slipped into the room. He set his phone down slowly and muttered in a low voice. Who exactly are you? The creature didn't answer. President Go stared at this mysterious guest, his brow furrowed in confusion. Could you really talk to a magical beast like this? But this one was different. It didn't act aggressively right away. Instead it just sat there calmly, almost as if it was ignoring Gun-hee entirely. In that quiet moment, Gun-hee took a closer look at the creature. It looked kind of like an ice elf. Those mystical beings known as ice slayers. These ice slayers were typically found in high-level dungeons, which only experienced adventurers could tackle. Hunters knew how special these ice elves looked. The stranger who showed up before Gun-hee had the usual traits of an ice elf, but was also different enough to confuse him. It's like this. If you think of ice elves as regular trees, then this one would be the old wise tree guarding the forest. Its skin even looked a bit like rough bark. The ice elf had long, pointed fingers and a few stray hairs on its chin. Its eyes looked really tired, like it had been around for thousands of years. This was no ordinary ice elf, it was ancient. But that's not all. This ice elf was seriously weird. Gun-hee swallowed hard without even realizing it. He tried to speak but stumbled over his words. I can't sense its presence, he muttered. It was strange because the intruder had already walked into the room and sat down on the couch, but Gun-hee hadn't noticed anything until he actually looked at it. A skilled hunter like him would normally spot any ordinary magical creature right away. But this was no ordinary beast. He quickly realized he couldn't take on something this powerful. Without making a sound, he flipped his phone on the desk and glanced at the screen. The creature noticed this and turned to face him. This place has been completely isolated from the outside world, it said. Just as promised, there was no signal on his phone. Gun-hee blinked hard. Am I dreaming or something? He muttered. A magic beast had not only sneaked into the Hunters Association headquarters right in the middle of bustling Seoul, but also spoken to him in Korean. This has to be a dream, right? Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his left shoulder. He yelped and grabbed it, just as the beast pointed at him. Gun-hee pulled back his hand, revealing what looked like a knife cut on his palm. But something was off. There was no blood at all. Instead of bleeding, the wound was covered in frost, as if it had been frozen over. How? Gun-hee stared at his injury in shock before looking up at the calm magic beast standing nearby. Did you imagine that pain too? President Go asked firmly, nodding with confidence. I know this is real, so I'm asking you again. Who are you? You shouldn't expect an ordinary human like you to recognize me. Ordinary human. The magical creature slowly rose from its spot. Then an instant, everything couch, table, chairs flew against the walls with a loud crash. Gun-hee's eyes went wide as fear gripped him. A chill swept through the office, sending shivers through the air. I don't mess with weaklings, a bold voice said. Step forward, fragment of luminosity. President Gun-hee Go had never been called a weakling before. But this time, he couldn't argue. The magical creature in front of him was no ordinary being, it radiated power. Every word it spoke rumbled like thunder, shaking the room to its core. Now, it barked, leaving no doubt that this was a force unlike anything else. Gun-hee could tell. There was a big difference in strength between him and his opponent, and beads of sweat formed on his forehead. Are you worried about hurting your vessel? He asked, but then added. Not that it'll last much longer anyway. Still, if the magic beast was holding back, because it was scared. The creature raised its palms, aiming them straight at Gun-hee. Cold wind swirled around its fists. There's no point in keeping this up, it said suddenly. Gun-hee frowned, totally lost. Huh? He replied. The magic beast let out a freezing blast from one of its hands. Boom! The explosion swept through where Gun-hee was standing, filling the room with thick white fog. It was so dense that you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Two glowing eyes appeared in the foggy haze. Check out these golden eyes. The magical creature grinned, clearly happy with what it saw, and blasted another wave of icy air at President Go. Oomph! President Go swung his arm, and the chilly attack smashed into a nearby wall. Boom! The wall exploded, revealing a vast dark emptiness beyond it. As the fog faded away, President Go stepped fully into view, surrounded by a bright golden glow. You've trapped us between worlds, he declared firmly. Whoa! Gun-hee's voice was totally unrecognizable. It sent chills down your spine. The magic beast finally spoke, its deep rumbly voice echoing through the air like thunder on a stormy night. At last, it said with a creepy grin that made your skin crawl. We meet at last, oh bright fragment of luminosity. It sounded super excited to have found you after such a long search. But then it dropped a bombshell. Who would have guessed you'd be stuck in a broken vessel, unable to use your power? Even though the beast's voice was full of excitement, its face didn't change one bit. It stayed as still and spooky as a stone statue. We found all 7 of you, the voice sneered, and 2 of those fragments have already been destroyed. Gun-hee stared in shock. Not only had they tracked him down, but 2 of his friends had lost their, whatever those fragments were. The rulers hadn't seen this coming. They weren't prepared for such a strong fight back. The magic beast grinned, clearly enjoying the moment. That face, it said with a smirk. I've always wanted to see you look so worried, instead of that smug expression you always wear. Now you think you can crush my ship without feeling bad. Think again. Gun-hee shouted. His golden glow got brighter until he shone like a star in the dark. But Frost Monarch just smirked. Are you really going to fight me? Whoa, what's the point? The monarch's eyes glowed with white light, and frost started spreading from its feet like a slow-moving river. Just as Gun-hee was covered in that light, a cold chill wrapped around the monarch. The Frost Monarch bared its teeth in a fierce grin. You're just borrowing that human body, it sneered. But I've fully taken over this form. This is way more fun. The monarch sounded super excited about being in control. Do you really think you stand a chance? The monarch let its guard down, and Gun-hee jumped at the rare opportunity, lunging forward. But the monarch snapped back into action fast. Boom! As some massive explosion rocked the air as hot and cold energy clashed. Crackum, boom, kaboom. As the fight went on, Gun-hee started to slow down. His moves weren't as sharp as before, and his injuries piled up one by one. Every time he moved, it was clear how much effort it took. Each breath came out as a puff of white mist in the freezing air. He let out a tired sigh. Ha! His fragile body could only handle this biting cold for another couple of minutes. The result of the battle had already been decided. Just as the monarch had said, Gun-hee's body was exhausted. He'd pushed his limits too far. His eyes glowed red, and a trickle of blood ran from his mouth, showing how much strain he was under. None of his efforts mattered in the end. Orsh, ka! A sharp spear of ice slammed into Gun-hee's chest and burst through his back. He let out a painful cry, coughing up blood. The Frost Monarch had struck the final blow, creating a blade of ice with just a flick of its fingers. It let out a disappointed hiss. Is that really all you've got? Fragment of luminosity. Wow, you're really weak. The Frost Monarch sneered. Gun-hee, breathing heavily, hung his head in defeat. Do you really think you can find a new vessel in just a year or two? But guess what, army is already here. Everything in this world would vanish before the ruler's soldiers ever showed up. Trying to protect these people was your big mistake. The Frost Monarch said harshly, making Gun-hee wish he'd never tried. Did you really think we were nothing? That we didn't matter? The Frost Monarch smirked like it had already won. But here's the thing. It lifted its other hand, and a wave of icy energy swirled to life, ready to finish off the human body. The ruler was using. Ahaha. Gun-hee laughed through bloody lips, his voice full of defiance. The monarch paused mid-attack, clearly caught off guard. Gun-hee panted, staring hard at the monarch. Did you think I picked a meaningless fight with you? His left hand gripped the monarch's wrist tightly. Just like you didn't see our plan coming. We've got something else you don't know about. A contingency? The monarch's eyes widened in surprise. Was Gun-hee bluffing? Gun-hee stood firm, his face set with determination. Suddenly the monarch whipped its head to the side. In a flash, a powerful wave of magic zoomed past him, so hot, it scorched his right arm. The blast smashed into the wall that kept the worlds apart, and the whole room erupted in a deafening explosion. The ground trembled beneath their feet, as dust and debris flew everywhere. What if the monarch had gotten hit by that blast? That was super close. Lucky for the monarch, it saw the attack coming just in time and dodged out of the way. It laughed, sounding pretty smug. Gun-hee must have used all his strength for that move. Was that your big secret weapon? The monarch teased with a grin, but then Gun-hee grinned right back. That's right. Gun-hee's smile sent a shiver down the monarch's spine. His face was pale from losing blood, but his grin made it seem like he'd already won. Why did the monarch feel uneasy when victory was already theirs? The answer came before they could even think about it. A loud crack shattered the air. The monarch turned to see their barrier splintering under a blast of magical energy. Was this Gun-hee's plan all along? It didn't make sense. This seemed like a useless effort. Tearing down dimensional walls changes nothing, the monarch said, trying to sound calm, but the spirit inside Gun-hee just smirked, its ominous smile hinting that something bigger was coming.